Good evening, everyone. If you would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Danny, would you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor Whale.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Pelosa.
Here.
Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Here.
Councilmember Wagner.
Here.
Thank you. I am going to move on to announcements and presentations. This evening we have two that may not show up, Council, on your agenda. First one is for the Auburn Municipal Airport Appreciation Month, and then a tribute to former Councilmember Roger Thorderson. Good evening, everyone. So first, we do have a proclamation. Kevin, do you want to come over and receive this? This is for Auburn Municipal Airport. This is whereas the Auburn Municipal Airport began operations in 1969 and has operated as an enterprise fund of the city since its inception. And whereas beginning in 1974 and continuing to present, the all-volunteer Auburn Airport Advisory Board has provided the City Council and administration with important and strategic guidance on growth, development, and operations of the airport. And whereas the Auburn Municipal Airport is designated as a public-use general aviation airport and is further classified as one of 5 reliever airports in the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, defined by the Federal Aviation Administration, that provide additional general aviation capacity to nearby commercial service airports. And whereas the Auburn Municipal Airport accommodates a wide variety of aeronautical activity, including small, single, and multi-engine aircraft, civilian helicopters, and occasional business class turbine aircraft. And whereas, as of the end of 2016, Auburn Municipal Airport had 299 based aircraft, 142,000 total annual operations, and 7 commercial tenants providing diverse aircraft services to support local and regional aircraft operations. And whereas the Auburn Municipal Airport has been identified in the city's recently approved 10-year economic development strategic plan as a key element in the city's current and future economic development efforts, and short-term and long-term planning actions are underway to increase the airport's economic contribution to the community and the region. And now, therefore, I, Nancy Backus, Mayor of the City of Auburn, do hereby proclaim the designation of June 2017 as Auburn Municipal Airport Appreciation Month. The municipal airport has provided invaluable aeronautical, economic, and public safety benefits to the Auburn community for almost 50 years, dated this 5th day of June 2017. And Kevin, since your department works with the Airport Advisory Board and works with Jamel as our contractor out there, I will give this to you, and would you like to say a few words?
I would, thank you. Mayor, members of the City Council, and audience members. As the Mayor indicated, the Auburn Municipal Airport has for almost 50 years been an important part of the community quilt of Auburn. It has contributed immensely, both in its early infancy as more of what we would term a hobby airport, and has grown into both an economic as well as a opportunity for folks who like or love to fly to have a place to do that out of Auburn. As we approach the 50th anniversary of the Auburn Municipal Airport, we are working to increase its presence, increase the community's awareness of it, and increase the opportunity for folks to both enjoy the airport and to economically flourish out there. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that a lot of the success of the Auburn Municipal Airport was built upon the, I think, almost 13 years of management by Finance Director Coleman. So I want to say thank you to her. She left a great foundation for my department, myself, to work on. So thank you for this acknowledgement. I think it's important acknowledgement of an important asset in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go forward and accept the appreciation of council. And this next presentation is going to be a little bit more difficult to make it through. Our dear friend, Roger Thorderson, who served this community so graciously, with such enthusiasm and with such dedication over a number of years through a number of different perspectives and roles, passed away about a week ago. And the world got a little less bright with Roger's passing, because he was one of those rare souls who you always knew where you stood with him. There was never a question of that. I see some heads nodding in the room. There was never, ever a question of where you stood. He was truly dedicated. He loved his family. He loved his city. And he loved to work hard for both. I have a proclamation that I would like to read, and I understand, Connie, you are going to be representing the city tonight, or I mean the family tonight. Would you, both, come on forward if you would. And thank you to the family for being here this evening. It means a lot to us that you took the time to come in so that we could help honor Roger. Whereas Roger Thorderson was born on May 4th, 1933 in Centralia, Washington, and passed away peacefully on May 27th, 2017. Whereas we remember and honor this very humble and gentle man as someone who cared deeply about his family and community and dedicated his life to the service of others. And whereas Roger was elected to the Auburn City Council in January 2004, he diligently served and shared his time, talents, and knowledge to the greatest capacity through December 31st, 2007. In addition, he served on numerous boards and commissions, both locally and regionally, with a focus on transportation issues. And whereas he kept a watchful eye on all things with King County Metro and was instrumental in working together to bring additional bus stops on the 180 line and services to our Lakeland residents. And whereas Roger was awarded the Hometown Hero Award for his extended community work with the Auburn Optimist Club and many years as a member of the Auburn Good Old Days Committee. He was a champion of children, and his legacy will be remembered for bettering the lives of young people and others in our community. And whereas Roger has earned the respect and admiration of our citizens because of his knowledge, experience, wisdom, and community spirit, and now therefore I, Nancy Backus, Mayor of the City of Auburn, do hereby proclaim the designation of June 5th, 2017 as Roger Thorderson Day of Remembrance, and deem it an honor to extend the Thorderson family our sincere appreciation for his service and urge our citizens to pay special tribute to this very special pioneer of Auburn, dated the 5th day of June, 2017. Connie, is there anything that? Yes, we do.
So then I won't repeat that.
Okay.
Thank you.
We do have a video that we're going to show. I do want to share with you a couple of things. I was going through some old trinkets this weekend and found a Re-elect Roger Thorderson City Council Position 5 Moving Auburn Forward pin.
Did it poke you?
It did, yeah. It was undone.
He took care of it.
He did. He wanted me to make sure that I found this, so I will give that to you. I don't know if you have any of those. but in case you don't, I wanted to share one with you because I do have two. I wouldn't give away my only one. I did have two. I also have some comments from Eric Robertson, who unfortunately was unable to be here with us this evening. But he said, "I am sorry that I am unable to attend tonight's meeting. Roger was one of my faves, especially when he served as vice chair on the Civil Service Commission with Chair Dick Kameyer and member Chuck Booth. What a power team, who always made a generally boring meeting pretty fun. Those three, ... I think that speaks volumes about those three because they were pioneers and leaders in our community, and hopefully Dick Kameyer now has the pleasure of the company of his dear friend with him. When we were talking about, in the proclamation about King County Metro, Roger took great pride in taking the bus to each and every one of those meetings and asking every one of the board members, "How'd you get here today?" I took the bus.
I love that story. It's so good.
Yeah, it
That's
was
perfect.
It
That's
was
perfect
one that
him.
it was perfect for him, and I had the opportunity to be in numerous trips and meetings with him, and just his grin. You knew there was something a brewing, and you hoped you weren't on the receiving end of it. You wanted to be around to watch whatever was going on, but you didn't want to be on the receiving end of it. But it was never dull and boring with Roger. And Rich and Bill, you and I served, the three of us served with Roger, and I think we did a pretty good job when we were all serving together. There was respect, there was understanding, admiration, there was disagreement, but at the end we were ultimately doing what we believed was the right thing for the citizens that we served.
I would just like to say one
Yes.
quick thing. My relationship with Roger goes way back to when he first came on the committee for the festival and said he would chair the parade. And his report was always, Roger, the parade committee would report, and it would just be, there will be a parade. That was it. We moved on. I'm not even sure why I came to the meeting, but other than to see what's going on. The part that I'd like to speak to is the family, and that you have had the privilege of having someone like Roger in your life. I go back to before lovely Marcia, when he was married to Margaret, and it was the year a family could have collapsed, but they stayed together. Margaret had a stroke, and then later pancreatic cancer. At the same time, his daughter Kathy was diagnosed with leukemia. So the call came from the hospital, Roger in the waiting room. Bananas aren't the only thing that come in bunches. Come on over, spark plug, I need some help. So I went to the hospital, and there was a process of that. And in the end, Margaret could not let go until I promised her that I would make sure all three of you girls were okay. And I'm going to do that, and I'm going to honor that, and it's going to continue on. Then I was so happy that he found Marcia, and I got to do their wedding invitations, and they sat at my table, and I pounded it out, and I still have one. So I got to enjoy that he had a great life with you too, and your wonderful daughters, and I just think that, don't you cry, because then I'll go. But I just want to say that he was a great guy, and he had that schmoopy grin, and he always hung up on you. He never finished saying goodbye. He always had my back, and he would be my champion if I needed it, and that was who he was. If it was right, he was in it. And so I just wanted to say that to the family, that it's important you stay together, that you work together, and you be a family no matter what, because it's not just about blood, it's about people, and you guys will do him a good justice and honor his memory by doing that, and that's why I'm here. And I love the guy. He was a brat, but I loved him. So I will accept this with honor for the family. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate that.
And who's running video, Dana? Are you going to do that? Okay. And we do have many friends of Roger in the audience, coworkers, peers, so thank you for attending this evening. It means a lot to me, it means a lot to the family, to know that you're here to honor Roger tonight. I had the opportunity to call Roger Thorderson my friend from the time we met in 2003 until his passing. Roger was one of those amazing men who you always knew where you stood with him. He was a dedicated and true friend, and certainly someone who was dedicated to giving back the very best to the community that he loved so much. He had the greatest sense of humor, and you always wondered what was going on if you saw that impish grin that Roger had, and if something really struck him funny. He had the greatest laugh, something that was so infectious, and you wanted to be involved in whatever it was that he was laughing about and enjoying so much. He was so dedicated to our community, with the Optimists, working with the school district, working as a city council member. He always gave it 100% plus. And I know that this community is better and richer because of the time that Roger spent dedicated to his community. Godspeed, my friend. We'll miss you until we meet again.
Most people call him Roger Dodger and have a lot of fun names for him, but I call him Roger Stop It. Everything he did was get me in trouble. So most of the time I would say, Roger, please forget my name. Please don't tell anybody else who I am. And he would laugh at me and say, oh, come on, Debbie, you can do it. And I said, you know, Roger, I'm not Mikey. I don't eat everything. So don't say give it to Debbie because she'll do everything. But he just kept laughing at me and telling me it was okay. He'd pat my little head and act like I was a 2-year-old and send me on my way.
I'm Rich Wagner, an Auburn City Councilman who served with Roger and knew him well before he got on the council. First time I met him was about 40 years ago when he was running the parade for Auburn days, or Auburn good old days at that time. And I showed up late and he managed to find a place for me in the parade. And it was typical of how he could just get the job done. When he joined the council, it was that way too, that from his long experience of running the school district bus system, he knew every corner of the city and the parts around the city because the school district's bigger. So we'll miss Roger both for his, but mostly for his ability to get the job done.
Hi, Roger. I miss you already. You are such an important part of my life here in Auburn, whether it was at the Y or at the college or just in the community. I could always count on you for wise counsel, for support, for being a great mentor, and an awesome, awesome friend. You're one of the reasons why I am living here in Auburn, and I'm really proud to do so. Thanks again, and we'll miss you.
Hi, I'm Pete Lewis, former mayor of Auburn. When I worked with Roger Thorderson as a council member, he was assigned to all things transit. I asked him how things were going. He asked me to take a ride on the bus to the meeting with him. We took the express bus, an hour and a half. We got to the meeting. We walked in, we sat down, and Roger said, all those people who are elected officials who took transit today, please raise your hand. And nobody did. He said, staff who live outside of Seattle, Bellevue, took transit today, please raise your hand. And nobody did. He did that at every meeting. Over the course of a year, he changed the makeup of the people on transit, and he got us transit buses down here. Roger was responsible for many of the buses you see today, and he did it all with that little smile and a question.
I'm bringing greetings from Michael Hirsch to the family, who says, beyond his wit and genuine concern, mostly I'll miss his insistence to watch Jeopardy when I needed to be collecting for the Seattle Times as a young teenager. Of course, with his ability to persuade, I always opted for Jeopardy in the armchairs with Roger and cookies from Margaret.
I'm Sue Singer, and I worked with Roger for 4 years on the City Council. He was always great to work with. I noticed that some people underestimated him because he was so quiet. Until they got to know him and they found out how intelligent he was, and he could contribute in any area of the government, any committee. So sometimes we would have a lively discussion in the committee, but like I said, Roger is quiet. So he'd be sitting there until he had something important to contribute. But once in a while, if he didn't like the way the discussion was going, you'd hear a little snort from him. And that was usually enough to make me rethink my position.
Roger Thorderson was the big guy with the glasses and the schmoopy smile that you saw around town. The guy in the windbreaker, a pen and a notebook shoved in the breast pocket of his check shirt. Roger didn't say much. In fact, he was so quiet you might not notice him at first. He was everywhere, always on the edges of things, watching, noticing, paying attention, enjoying the heck out of just being there, being a part of the crowd, being a part of his Auburn community. He wasn't born here, but he was here so long that he may as well have been. A lot of us first knew him in his career with the Auburn School District as transportation manager that he did for 10 years and maintenance and operations administrator for 20. Or we knew him as an optimist, that forward-looking group that looks to improve the quality of life for underserved groups in our community. He was a big part of the Auburn Santa Parade and a perennial member of the Auburn Good Old Days Committee. Roger was right at the head of the Auburn Good Old Days Parade, serving as Grand Marshal years ago. He also made a quiet name for himself down at City Hall and in King County government. He kept his eye on the tangled process of forward motion, sometimes riding the bus to the transit meetings and embarrassing the group there. He kept his eye on the tangled process as he became a scholar, you might say, of how Auburn can meet the forward needs and the future head on. You could ask him anything. He'd tell you what he thinks, what he knows, getting straight to the point with few words. He never said goodbye on the phone. He just hung up. That was Roger. Over the years, he maintained both a high presence and a characteristic low profile in his volunteer and community service activities, which included chairing the Auburn Valley YMCA, serving on the Auburn Parks and Rec Board, and Metro and Sounder and the Orca issues that needed to be worked out. He was instrumental in that as well. A lot of people don't know that. He was with the Auburn Juvenile Conference, and the list goes on. He was honored by the Auburn City Council as an Auburn hometown hero in August of 2002, 2 years before his first election to the Auburn City Council. At home, life has not been without its challenges and its special joys. Roger will have left his mark on our community, his family, and our hearts. We will miss you, Roger, and to quote one of Roger's famous committee reports, "There will be a parade." Miss you, goofball.
Thank you to the Thorderson family for being here with us this evening and allowing us to honor such a special man for your family, for us as his friends and his work family, and for a community to know just a little bit more about what we've lost, but hopefully what we gained throughout the years of knowing Roger and learning from him and carrying on his traditions. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you so much for sharing Roger with us. All right, and we will move on. Danny, do we have any agenda modifications?
No change to the agenda, Your
Thank
Honor.
you. We have no public hearings this evening, so we will move to audience participation. This is the place on the agenda where the public is invited to speak to the City Council on any issue. Those wishing to speak are reminded to sign in on the form provided, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Yes.
Hello. Thank you for hearing what I had to say. Please forgive me because this is the first time I've ever been to a meeting.
No worries, just relax.
Since I've moved here to Auburn.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I do need your name and address for the record, though.
Mary Miller, 1802 I Street Northeast, Apartment B, on Auburn. Since I've moved here, I use a power chair periodically, but I notice some of the sidewalks that I'm going up and down, just within about 4 blocks of where I live, I have trouble with, and a lot of times I see other wheelchairs that have to go down the bike lanes. But like bushes are out. And so, I mean, if you're walking or if I'm walking with her, there's enough room to get around. But if I'm in my chair, I'm getting hit by branches or having to go out of the street because people are parking their cars on the sidewalk. And sometimes when you can cross, you have to go down the street in a way. It's just, I have some concerns about that. I know that you've been working on the area, the apartment that I live in. He's been staying on top of whatever you asked him to do. But I notice a lot of the other apartments and houses around there don't do that. The street part, I mean, they can't do anything. But the bushes and stuff that are crossing the sidewalks are kind of awkward. And so, anyway.
Okay. Kevin? So Kevin is our Director of Community Development and Public Works. I'm going to ask him to speak with you when you're finished and get some more information from you so that we can look into those issues and see what we can do.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? Final time, anyone like to speak? All right, we will move on. I don't believe we have any correspondence this evening, Danny?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so we will move to ad hoc committee reports. Ad hoc committee chairs may report on the status of their ad hoc council committee's progress on assigned tasks and may give their recommendation to the city council, if any. And we will start with the Finance Ad Hoc Committee for Claims and Payroll Vouchers. Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, for the sake of being redundant, as members of the Council Ad Hoc Finance Committee, Councilmember Wagner and I reviewed the payroll vouchers and electronic deposits for approximately $2.3 million and claims vouchers and wire transfers for approximately $2.4 million for the periods May 11th to May 31st and June 5th, respectively, 2017. All questions by the committee for the Finance Directorate were answered to the committee's satisfaction, and the committee recommends council approval of these expenses. Thank you.
Thank you. And annual selection of the Deputy Mayor, Councilmember DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. The committee, Councilmember Pelosa, Trot Manuel, and myself met this afternoon, and we took a look at some of the issues that were brought forward at the last study session, and we are prepared to bring back another round of the selection process to the next study section next Monday.
Okay, great. So, Danny, if you can add that to the study session agenda. Thank you. All right, $20 tab fee, full spectrum of issues regarding the $20 car tab fee. Deputy Mayor Wales.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. We met this evening at 6 o'clock in our continual quest to see what we can do to find some additional revenue for the 105 Fund local preservation. And we're getting some good ideas, and we appreciate the help of Finance Director Coleman and Director Schneider. I believe our next meeting is on the 19th, but I'm not sure if we're all going to be here. So maybe we need to postpone that until the first meeting in July. So with that, with the nods, I guess it's the first meeting, regular council meeting in July, that Monday at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, I believe that would be July 3rd. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered by the City Council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. Do I have a motion? Councilmember DeCoursey.
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Baggett. Thank you. Councilmember DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. The consent agenda this evening includes the minutes of the May 15th, 2017 regular City Council meeting, the claims and payroll vouchers as were discussed by Councilmember Baggett, and approval of the final pay estimate to final pay estimate number 5 for the contract for the Auburn City Hall Council Remodel Project, project number CP 1518.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Passes. Okay, we have no unfinished business listed, no new business. Resolutions. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. Resolution number 5298, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, waiving competitive bidding requirements for the procurement of pressure-reducing valves stations associated with CP 1617 Lee Hill Pressure Reducing Valve Station Capital Project.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor Wells.
I move for the approval of Resolution 5298.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Holman.
Second.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wales.
Again, this is more work from our Utilities Department to keep our projects, our stations fully operational and in good stead, and I recommend that we approve it.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember DeCoursey.
Just for clarification and informational purposes. So I imagine the reason we purchased from GC Systems is to make all of the PRV stations identical to each other, so we're not looking at a multitude of different products or types of services.
Your Honor and members of the City Council, Assistant City Engineer Jacob Sweeting is in attendance this evening. I'm going to ask him to respond to that question.
You can, yeah, up at the microphone. Jacob, thank you.
Thank you once again, Jacob Sweeting, Assistant City Engineer. Councilmember DeCoursey, your question in regards to the PRV stations, yes. Majority of our 42 PRV stations are GC systems, so replacement parts are all made for those systems. Makes it much more efficient to maintain them.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of resolution number 5298, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Passes.
Resolution number 5299, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, setting the time and date for a public hearing before the City Council on the 2018-2023 Transportation Improvement Plan.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor Wells.
I move for the approval of Resolution 5299.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Holman.
Second.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wells.
This just allows for us to have a public hearing and set the date and time for the public hearing on our tip.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of resolution number 5299, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say no. Passes. All right, we have completed the business of the city, so we will move on to mayor and council member reports. At this time, the mayor and city council may report on their significant city-related activities since the last regular council meeting, and we will begin with council member Pelosa. No, we could always skip it this week.
Must be a short one. I'll skip for the moment. I'll come back.
Okay. We may not come back. You want to?
I found it.
See,
I found it, Mayor.
see, all I had to do was threaten him that we may not come back. All right.
Thank you very much. On May 24th, I attended the Metropolitan Pollution Abatement Advisory Committee. This committee researches pollution matters of water, and we are advisory to the Regional Water Quality Committee. which I spent 6 years on. So we talked about the West Point treatment plant, the one that they had the catastrophe of flooding during a winter storm this past year. There are a mile of tunnels that have been repaired. The lighting and equipment, some of it has been replaced. They still need to repair 2 boilers in that facility. And this West Point is on the Puget Sound in West Seattle area. They had to replace the staff locker room because the water filled the whole locker room full of wastewater. The multiple insurance policies will cover all costs, and the costs are going to be between $29 and $57 million. The plant was fully operational on 27 April. All of the replacement material, equipment is being updated in the latest technology. Just for information, King County carries a $500 million property insurance. There are still equipment that needs replacing, waters, pumps, instruments, and the next steps, there's going to be quarterly reports all the way through May of 2018. And lastly, on July the 26th, the abatement group is going to have a tour of the wastewater treatment Tegro facilities in Tacoma. That's where they gather 100% of their biosolids, and they make fertilizer.
It's cool.
Yeah. So it's Tegro. Tegro is the name, T-A-G-R-O. So go ahead and buy some. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Trout Manuel.
And I'm passing.
All right. Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you, Your Honor. At the last meeting, we kind of passed on our reports. So
You have 6 weeks worth? Is that what you're telling us?
no, not really. Not this time. Just briefly, as a member of the City of Auburn Law Enforcement Officers and Firefighters Board, known as the LEOFF, Left Board, for our police officers and firefighters, Councilmember Trout Manuel and myself had the pleasure of attending the annual Washington State Left Disability Conference held in Chelan, Washington. Many of the subjects addressed at this conference were elements that our Auburn Board deals with each month, not only with the board, but also personally in many respects. The conference covered such topics as safety in the home, elder and vulnerable adult abuse, hospice care, Medicare coverages, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, retirement options while safely aging at home, concussions, veterans benefits, and many other important training opportunities. The speakers were excellent and the training was very beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wells.
Thank you. On June 2nd, a number of us, Yolanda and our Honorable Mayor and myself, I'm not sure, Bob, if you were able to come to the Gildo Ray Multicultural Day. It was wonderful. It was a couple of hours, and as you watch this event grow, we are bringing in more and more of the diverse cultures through food and dance, and it was a very lively and fun event, and thank goodness it didn't rain this year. That was followed by the opening of the Bill Pelosa Farmers Market on Sunday. We want to thank you again, Bill, all of us, for the contributions you've made to letting us have that thriving market. It was, again, sunny, so I think our magic is holding on. As we look to the future, the South Puget Sound Leadership Institute is going to be having graduation at the Chamber on the 20th of this month, and it would be nice if you could attend. There will be 11 graduates, but in addition to that, we are going to be providing 2 scholarships to youth council members, and they will be there. We're going to see their applications, which are visual PowerPoints and videos, so you can see the quality of what's come from our youth council, and they'll each be presented with a $1,000 scholarship. It would be nice if you could all be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wagner?
I have a question, Deputy Mayor. You were referring to youth council, but did you mean the junior city
I sure
council?
did, yes.
But that brings a thought to mind. Maybe we should think of adding the youth council to that process. But for sure, we got to keep those two separate because they do very different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Good idea.
Thank you. Councilmember Holman?
Thank you, Mayor. On Friday, May 26th, I attended the Forensics Investigation Council, which I'm a board member of. And they are developing in Washington State quite a backlog of cases because they have 12 open positions across several functional scientific areas. They'll continue to have openings because of the disparity in wages between what we pay and our scientists, our forensic scientists in Washington State, and what the surrounding states pay their forensic scientists. So we lose to Idaho and Oregon and Montana quite a few of our scientists. The backlogs will continue to be a problem as the case loads increase and back up due to the shortage of scientists. Currently, if any of you have the right credentials, there are 12 openings on the Washington State Crime Lab. They have openings for 4 DNA scientists, 1 CODIS, which is Combined DNA Index System Specialist scientist, 4 materials analysts. Those are people that look at fibers, fire debris, paint, complex chemistry issues, and trace evidence, and 2 firearms specialists, the people that look at spent cartridges for finding out what type of gun the cartridge was spent or shot out of, and 1 crime laboratory division support assistant, someone that helps enter the data and takes care of the administrative. So there's 11 master degree, PhD type positions and 1 lab support assistant. What's driving a lot of the backlog is that, for instance, DNA cases. Year to date, just in the first 5 months of this year, the crime lab received 1,409 and yet have completed 1,088. So there's a backlog of 321 cases. Each scientist can do approximately 50 cases per month, and they're down 4 scientists. They have had a significant increase in the number of DNA cases being submitted to the crime lab. There's been a 240% increase in the sexual assault case submittals for DNA analysis since 2014. Firearms cases received 1,059, and they've been able to complete 853 year to date. This leaves 206 cases yet to be caught up with. Latent prints is a highlight right now, fingerprint analysis. They've received 692 and they've completed 817. They're catching up with the backlog there because guess what? 6 months ago they hired a latent fingerprint analysis and he hadn't been stolen by Oregon yet. Then there's an accidental exposure, and this is a warning to my former colleagues in law enforcement. They had an accidental exposure to fentanyl. Fentanyl is a powerful synthetic opioid, some 50 to 100 times more powerful than heroin. Law enforcement officer in Washington State was participating in the processing of a drug courier's vehicle. He wore his issued protective gear, mask, goggles, and gloves while processing the vehicle. Sometime after finishing, he noticed a white substance on his uniform, and without thinking much about it, he brushed it off. Unfortunately, it turned out with his bare hand, because he was back in the office, and it turned out to be fentanyl, and he suffered an opioid overdose through skin absorption, or that he he got it suspended in air and breathed it in, and he was losing the ability to breathe. So fortunately, his partner had access to Narcan, administered it, and saved the trooper's life. So that was quite interesting to me. Then on Wednesday, May 31st, I had the great pleasure of sitting in on the SCORE, our regional jails meeting, and I'm so glad that this city council had the foresight and courage to build a regional misdemeanor jail. This predates my coming onto the council, but SCORE stands for South Correctional Regional Entity, and it saves the cities of Auburn, Burien, Federal Way, Renton, SeaTac, and Tukwila money every day. I have a sense of pride from how SCORE is so professionally operated and administered. Let's talk about some of the things that sets SCORE above most other jails. Currently, SCORE is the only jail in Washington to be accredited by WASPIC, the Washington Association Chiefs of Police, Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. And it's one of only 2 in Washington State accredited by the National Commission on Correctional Health Care. Nationally, only 8% of jails are accredited. There are 3,300 jails, approximately, in the United States, and only 264 of those are accredited. The reason you need accreditation is it lowers the litigation risk and it lowers your insurance rates. It also spells out in policy the requirements for the ethical, professional, and humane treatment of inmates. Our SCORE has had a clean Washington State audit year after year since its very inception. And it continues to implement lean accounting practices. This is an accounting and work efficiency program that is practiced here in Auburn, was developed by the Toyota Corporation, and is used by the Boeing Corporation. But it identifies value from the viewpoint of the customer. Now, the customer in the case of a jail is us, the taxpayers of Auburn, who are having to pay for this service. I suppose the inmates are also a customer in a sense, and it looks for ways to do things more efficiently, better, less expensive, and I won't go into all the 5 steps of lean, but the fact that a jail is using lean is I think, wonderful. And Auburn's daily inmate population continues to run from the mid-50s to low 60s, daily inmate population, at a cost of less than half what we would be paying for other alternatives. 68% of inmates are under the influence of alcohol or drugs at the time of booking. In recent times, the ratio has changed. Today, 80% of inmates under the influence of some intoxicant are on an opioid, and 20% alcohol. 15 years ago, it was just about the opposite. About 75 or 3/4 of the people that were arrested were under the influence of some substance. And back then, 80% were under the influence of alcohol and 20% opioids. There's been a complete reversal. And to help combat this opioid crisis, SCORE is one of only a few jails making access to methadone treatment available to inmates already registered. SCORE is continuing to look for ways to expand treatment options for inmates with addiction problems. A couple other light items. SCORE works with Native American and Alaska Native organizations to help transitioning inmates at the time of their release. So they're getting some help when they get back out on the street. And here's an interesting fact. If you look at the inmates' city of residence at time of arrest, an interesting fact emerges. Approximately 60% of the inmates booked into SCORE by the 7 member agencies live in the city where they were arrested or a neighboring South King County city. The other 40% of the inmates booked are from cities outside of South King County. So the majority of people we arrest caper at home. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Wagner.
I'd like to comment that one of the reasons there's such a glowing report for SCORE is that it's led by our former chief of police, Jim Kelly.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. And Penny Bartley from Renton, 2 very quality people.
On the 18th, I attended the Pierce County Regional Council, and there was a lively discussion around the so-called concept of centers. Puget Sound Regional Council designates the cities as various kinds of centers. We are designated as a regional growth center, and our boundary is pretty much the downtown urban core. But there's a lot of discussion now about how to expand or change the definition of manufacturing industrial centers. We are not one of those because we're not as big as the Duwamish or so on, because when the definition of those manufacturing industrial centers was first established, you had to be really big to qualify. And there's a lot of talk now from people like Lakewood and other places that are kind of like Auburn. We have some stuff, but not huge, to get ourselves designated as that kind of a center as well. Because the reason you want to be designated as a certain kind of center is it gives you a big leg up for money from Puget Sound Regional Council, from the federal government. So I don't know whether Kevin, whether you're looking into that change at PSRC, but I think we probably ought to see if we qualify, or with the changes, we'll qualify for what they call a MIC, Manufacturing Industrial Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. On May 17th, I attended the King County Regional Transit Committee meeting. We had a couple of briefings that day, but one in particular was looking at the designation of what's known as the Alternative Services Program, and Metro changing that designation of the program to a new name called Community Connections. And what the Metro staff is looking at is to provide a more robust program, to make the program more scalable, more sustainable, and in the sense of when we're looking at how these services are provided, using the term alternative services somewhat seemed in some contexts as a negative statement. So this hopefully will provide better value to potential customers and stakeholders in the process overall. Metro's, the RTC has been working very closely with Metro staff in relation to the program, and we are going to be briefed on a quarterly basis now related to the updates on the Community Connections program. On May 19th, I attended the Affordable Housing Advisory Board meeting. The context of that meeting was specifically related to a letter from Governor Inslee to the board that was written on January 17th, where Governor Inslee requested the Affordable Housing Advisory Board leadership to convene a committee to provide recommendations on how to reduce barriers to housing development in Washington. And I've mentioned this before, but in that particular letter, the governor actually mentioned the words housing affordability crisis in our state. So there was a committee of numerous members of the existing Affordable Housing Advisory Board, other members from around the community, and the task for the subcommittee, which was known as HART, or Affordable Housing Affordability Response Team, was to provide a draft of recommendations back to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board as a whole, and to get consensus on that, to prepare a letter that was due to the governor on June 1st. And one of the recommendations we made was that the letter should be hand-delivered, not mailed to the governor. So at the next meeting next month in Olympia, I'll find out whether or not they hand-delivered the letter, and we'll see what the results are from the meeting with the governor. The committee actually, and for Councilmember Wagner, one of the items in the recommendations, again, through a number of different ways, but is to look at the GMA and specifically for the RGA. So that's part of the issues related to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board as well. The recommendations are that were made and presented to the AHAB were regarding land use, providing funding and support to local governments to plan for housing at every income level, especially for lower income levels, but the key thing is for affordability at all income levels. To support local government to assess land capacity through buildable land reports. We hear from a number of different factors, especially in King County, that there is sufficient land for building for the future, which includes PSRC's projected growth capacity into 2040. Some of us don't see that, some of us question that, and one of the recommendations here again is to look at a buildable lands report that should provide better information. Another recommendation for the land use is to provide a broad-based education to encourage communities to facilitate the development of more affordable housing, and then looking at further areas for the possibility of land uses as this goes along. Recommendations related to construction regulations included seeking responsible changes to development-related statutes and regulations to facilitate housing development. That's a review of the RCWs in that context. To seek responsible changes to development-related statutes and regulations. I'm sorry, I just read that one, to facilitate housing development. There's 9 different recommendations in that particular one, so I went ahead on the slide on that one. And also looking at the permitting, construction, and regulatory factors as areas for further research. So what are the barriers to converting raw land to developable land? Are there a sufficient number of builders to ensure there's a healthy economic competition within the industry? Are there labor shortages that affect the market? How can we strengthen and bolster up to make this a better financially feasible process for the private market to develop market rate and subsidized housing in the affordable area? And also looking at the process of how local jurisdictions through state law are currently conducting their permitting process, and are there any ways to adjust that? The last area was in funding and finance, and the key issue there, and I'll stop at this one, is to once again to tell the state legislature to stabilize the Housing Trust Fund budget to allow for more accurate planning and development of low-income housing. The request that was made last budget season, which is currently now in the legislature, was for the Housing Trust Fund to be funded at a level of $200 million. The governor's budget showed approximately $117 million. We don't know where it's going to wind up now, but it's going to be probably less than even the governor's budget. But $200 million is just a good starting point for that. Thank you.
Thank you. On May 24th, we had the Livable City end-of-year project review at the Community and Event Center, and several of our council members I know were there to work with the UW students who have been working on these projects since the beginning of the school year. And it was really exciting to see their enthusiasm about the projects, including what could be done in the alley behind the theater, between the theater and our new cultural arts center, and also some on homelessness and just a lot of great projects, some on healthy eating, some on solid waste. So it was kudos to council for approving the contract with the University of Washington for the Livable Cities Year project, and we were the first, as you know, for the city for them to work with, and their next city is going to be Tacoma. So we will be sharing some of our best experiences with Tacoma and help them get up to speed on the great opportunities ahead of them. And UW Tacoma is also going to be in partnership on this round. So great work with the students Also on that day, we swore in one of our newest officers. Actually, it is our newest officer, Officer Devin Nelson. And so we still have 6 or 7 openings right now, Bob? 6. We still have 6 openings, so pardon me, anyone out there that knows of a good candidate that wants to be an Auburn police officer, please send them our way. We are looking for 6 great new police officers. Also that evening went to the Troy Field at Auburn Memorial Stadium for a special presentation with our Auburn Special Olympian athletes. They received new jerseys. They have worn the same, while I think lavender is a beautiful color, they have had the same jerseys for about 15 years. They are heavy, they are warm, they are ugly, and so with the help of the Valley Professional Firefighters, Local 1352, and the Merlin Shager family, they were able to raise funds to provide new jerseys and training jerseys for all of the athletes, and they were able to use those at the Special Olympics that were held this past weekend. So the athletes were super excited to receive the jerseys. They all had their names and numbers on them, so that was great fun to see. On May 25th, along with Councilmember Pelosa, I attended Green River Veterans Coin Challenge ceremony, where all of the veterans in attendance received a newly designed coin from Green River. They design a new coin each year, I understand. Bill, do you have all 9 of them? Probably so. So it was wonderful to be able to honor our veterans. And then on the 29th, as most of you did, we attended the Memorial Day services, both at the cemetery and at Veterans Memorial Park. And I want to say a big thank you to VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and also our Intertribal Warriors Society for taking part in the ceremony, and all of the City of Auburn employees who worked that day to ensure that our cemetery was open and inviting to all of those families who were there to honor their loved ones. On May 30th, Governor Gregoire invited me to join in a discussion on the future of economic development for our region, and that will take into consideration King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties. There were leaders from the Boeing Company, from Microsoft. Each one of the county executives was there, and some of the Pierce County council members were there as well. And we will be continuing the conversation on just exactly what economic development should be and who should be promoting that, if there needs to be one organization that does that for the entire region, which is the way that we are leaning at this point in time. Not to do away with the local economic development, but to enhance the opportunities and to be able to provide the analytics that we can all use. May 31st, we had, I believe it was the 4th meeting at Gildo Ray with our Latino community, and this time we had officers there to talk about gang activity and also bullying and what parents can do to identify whether their children are being bullied or are perhaps the bullies, and how to best prepare for the summer and what may be coming about. And we are hoping to have one more meeting before school is out, although it will be tight, as the families are interested in learning about emergency preparedness and what we might be able to do to provide them with opportunities to be able to ensure the safety of themselves and their neighbors. And as the Deputy Mayor said, we also attended the Multicultural Festival on June 2nd, a fun event. Lots of fun dancing, and it is growing every year. On June 1st, I traveled across the mountains to Roslyn because each year Congressman Reichert holds a mayor's meeting for all of the cities that he represents. And believe it or not, Auburn is the largest city in his district. So we have that honor. The cities that also were in attendance, because there were a few conflicts that day, were Entiat, Chelan, Milton, Sammamish, Buckley, Ording, Snoqualmie, Wenatchee, who, by the way, is paying developers to come build houses in their city, and Roslyn. And we all talked about the challenges facing our cities, and the cities are very similar, regardless of whether we're in Eastern Washington or Western Washington. Some of those issues are the same: homelessness, behavioral health, mental health, and drug addiction. And we also talked about how much we appreciated the COPS grants that are being utilized, because in the city of Auburn, those 6 positions that are open are based, majority of the funding is coming from our COPS grant. And so we are very appreciative of that. We let Congressman Reichert know how much we want that to continue, and he promised that he is definitely in support of that. In fact, he has been very outspoken with his Republican counterparts in Washington, D.C., sharing information on how we cannot afford to cut human services. He is being bold and going out on a limb, and he said, surprisingly, a majority of his fellow Republicans are feeling the same way, except for the Freedom Caucus, and they are going to be working diligently to ensure that those human services funds do not get cut. There is talk about $2.5 trillion that could be repatriated offshore, similar to something that President Bush did to repatriate dollars back to the United States at a low or zero tax implication. And that $2.5 trillion, there's talk of having that all dedicated to infrastructure. And wouldn't that be wonderful if we could get some of that funding for infrastructure? We all were in support of that and appreciated his work on that. And then, similar to conversations that we have been having in Auburn with Algona Pacific, Auburn School District, and Green River College, is how do we grow family wage middle income jobs? And one of the things that Congressman Reichert talked about is student loans and his desire to encourage the ability for those who would like to enter an apprenticeship program to be able to utilize student loans instead of just for 2- and 4-year colleges. So he is listening to the needs of our community, and we were all appreciative of his time and efforts. And he is no stranger to Auburn. He has been a good friend to Auburn, and we expect that to continue. And then later that afternoon, after driving across the mountains in the pouring rain, attended the grand opening of our beautiful new Dream Center at the transit station, which is our business incubator, and a big thanks to Doug Lean for working with the Port of Seattle to secure that grant. And we had a couple of the port commissioners, Commissioner Albro and Commissioner Bowman, in attendance as we cut that ribbon, and the excitement and the possibilities for that incubator, or Dream Center as we prefer to call it. I can hardly wait to see what comes out of the innovation in that room. So with that, Mr. City Attorney, do we have need for an executive or closed session?
No, we do not, Your Honor.
Then we are adjourned.